Super Smash Bros. Series is full of first playable appearances when it comes to its large roster of characters. Usually this applies to the bad guys like Ganondorf, and some weird decisions like the Wii Fit trainer. But I was curious to know exactly when the first playable occurrence of all these characters are outside of the Super Smash Bros. Series. I'm talking either being the main character, only being playable in some side mode, or anything where the player is able to directly control these characters for the first time. I'm going over all the fighters as well as their alternate costumes if they represent another character, like Alf and the heroes, resulting in a total of 95 characters to find a playable occurrence for. Hey, 95! That's a good number! It doesn't matter if the game they are playable in came out before or after their Smash debut. Like I said, Smash is the first time many of these characters were able to be controlled directly by the players. But there are some other roles for this quest that I need to follow. First of all, only the first playable instance of a character will be counted, so I'm not going to count Super Mario 64 as Mario's game of choice. To make things more interesting, and so I can cover as many games as possible, every character needs to be represented by a different game or game mode, unless the different characters significantly change how the game is played. In this entire list, only 2 characters are going to share the exact same gameplay, and I'll explain why when I get to them. Second, obviously, the characters need to be directly controlled in some form, which means appearances as a background or boss character are not included. Whether it's grid-based strategy, space dogfights, or party boards, it doesn't matter. Proxy commands, a term I'm using where the player is issuing controls through another character or device to reach another character, are not accepted. There is one series of characters that made following this rule extremely difficult to search for, but I'll get to that later. The release dates I'll be mentioning for the games will be based on whenever the first version of the game was released, with that usually being Japan. And also spoiler warning for many games covered here. Let's start out this insanely long list with fighter number 1, Mario. Everyone knows this guy, and most of those everyones also know Mario's first playable appearance was Nintendo's standout title when getting into video games, the arcade hit from July of 1981, Donkey Kong. Here, Mario Jumpman Mario has to climb up a construction site to rescue his lady from the clutches of the enraged ape, the titular Donkey Kong. While the Mario here doesn't have the moves you would see later on and in Smash, he still has that classic jump and even the hammer. Donkey Kong has been re-released in many forms over the 4 decades it's been out, so it wasn't until the Arcade Archives released for the Nintendo Switch in 2019 when the original arcade game was able to be played at home as is. Speaking of Donkey Kong, let's talk about the Big Ape. Donkey Kong himself wasn't playable in any of the arcade titles. If anything, his son, Donkey Kong Jr., was the hero of Donkey Kong Jr., and Donkey Kong 3 had this other guy named Stanley. So when did Donkey Kong himself become playable? Well, if you were thinking Donkey Kong Country, you'd be wrong. Before Mario was a thing, Nintendo was making these little LCD calculator-like devices called Game & Watch. They ran along concurrently with their arcade and console titles for a while, but the one I'm focusing on right now is a 2-player system called Donkey Kong Hockey. Released in November of 1984, this system has Mario and Donkey Kong playing hockey. So no, Mario Sports Mix was not the first time hockey was introduced to the Mario world. Player 1 controls Mario and Player 2 controls Donkey Kong, and you compete against each other to see who can be the first to score 10 points. 2-player mode is only in Game B. Game A has Player 1's Mario compete against a CPU-controlled Donkey Kong. My man Link has had 3 incarnations starring in Super Smash Bros. 64 and Melee had the Link from Ocarina of Time, Brawl and Smash 4 had the Link from Twilight Princess, and Ultimate had the Link from Breath of the Wild. Link as a character first appeared as the main player character in the original The Legend of Zelda, released for the Famicom Disk System in February of 1986. Of course, being the main hero of Hyrule, he has remained the sole playable character in every game in the series since, with only a few exceptions. Link in Smash uses items and moves from a mixture of adventures, but they all originate from at least the first 2 games in the series and Ocarina of Time, with some modifications made to Link's weapons in Brawl and Ultimate to more closely resemble their respective incarnations. For a while, Samus Aran was the only Metroid representative in Smash until Ultimate, when Dark Samus and Ridley also joined. Sure, Zero Suit Samus joined in Brawl, but that was literally just Samus herself. Anyway, Samus got her start in the first Metroid game, a side-scrolling exploration title released for the Famicom Disk System in August of 1986. Samus usually is the only playable character in the series, aside from 2 spin-off titles, Metroid Prime Hunters and Metroid Prime Federation Force, where other characters were able to be played as. While Samus has a wide range of weapons in her arsenal, her basics have been carried over from the first game ever since, and those basics remain a fundamental part of her playstyle in Smash Bros. Things get a little interesting with Yoshi. His first appearance is in Super Mario World, where Mario rescues him from an egg Bowser trapped him in. However, Yoshi himself isn't directly playable. The player still has control over Mario and Luigi, Yoshi is just acting as an extension to them. Even when you use his tongue to eat something, you can see Mario and Luigi directing Yoshi to do so. So moving on to the next instance where Yoshi is directly playable, Super Mario Kart, released for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System in August of 1992. Yoshi appeared in a puzzle game called Yoshi before, but he was either standing off to the side or part of a prize for condensing enemies into eggs, and was not playable by any means. In Super Mario Kart, Yoshi is one of 8 playable racers, matching with Peach in having high acceleration and low handling. He's able to get ahead of the competition pretty easily, but he doesn't do very well in turns. Since then, Yoshi has remained a playable character in every Mario Kart game, made frequent appearances in the main and spin-off Mario titles, and even got his own sub-series called Yoshi's Island, which is where his Smash character is based on. Kirby! The little pink puffball started off as a little white puffball in Kirby's Dream Land, released for the Game Boy in April of 1992. In this game, he can fly and suck up enemies in efforts to reach King Dedede and return the food he stole. He didn't gain the ability to gain abilities until Kirby's Adventure. Kirby has remained a main playable character in every installment that has Kirby's name in the title, which means you won't see him at all in Dedede's Drum Dash Deluxe. Kirby's moveset in Super Smash Bros. Comes from various copy abilities that he would gain by sucking up all of these enemies. The Star Fox titles don't normally let you play as the characters on foot, instead you spend most of your time looking at the back of R-Wings or Landmasters as you take down the forces of Andross or whoever. Star Fox, first released for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System in February of 1993, only lets you play as Fox McCloud, the leader of the Star Fox team. You are playing as the character controlling the spaceship, but the only time you really see Fox himself is during dialogue boxes with his face. You don't see Fox in full until Star Fox 64, which apparently also has an on-foot fighting mode for multiplayer. Smash Bros. Has Fox use a blaster and reflector, as well as phantom creating and fire flying moves, which were created specifically for Smash Bros. Fox himself also is able to adventure on foot in Star Fox Adventures. Remember when I mentioned the proxy commands, a term I'm using where the player is issuing controls through another character or device to reach another character for them to act on, and then I'm not accepting them? And I also said one series made following this difficult? Yeah, that would be Pokemon. In the main Pokemon titles, you control a human trainer, who acts as a representative of the player. During battles, Pokemon are issued commands to fight against each other. These commands are selected by the player to be issued through the Pokemon trainer for the Pokemon to carry out. You are not directly controlling the Pokemon themselves, and this is true for every single main Pokemon entry in the series. So when it comes to controlling the Pokemon creatures, we have to look at the spin-off titles. We got some Pokemon that can be controlled in the Pokemon Stadium minigames, but in Pikachu's case that's simply pressing the A button at the right time, which is lame. So the first full instance where we can take direct control of Pikachu and the others is in Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, Red Rescue Team, and Blue Rescue Team, released as 2 games in typical Pokemon simultaneous fashion for the Game Boy Advance and Nintendo DS respectively in November of 2005. We'll just focus on Red Rescue Team for Pikachu, in order to leave my options open for other Pokemon later, and so I don't exhaust this list too soon. In the Mystery Dungeon series, you wake up as a Pokemon, with the Pokemon you become being the result of a personality quiz you take at the start of the game. One of these results is Pichu, where you can also choose as a partner Pokemon if you end up as someone else. As a Pokemon, you have direct access to the moves they would use and the paths they take as they explore mysterious dungeons and rescue other Pokemon. Pikachu himself is also playable directly in other spin-off titles, such as the Poke Park series, and as a fighter in another fighting game, Pokken Tournament. When it came to playable instances of the Pokemon, Pikachu was by far the easiest one to find something for. But the other Pokemon on this list become very difficult, especially with the other rules in place of 1 character per game. When it came time to make another Mario title, the idea was to make 2 players battle for points. Enter Luigi, who was determined to hold his title Player 2 for many years until Luigi's Mansion. Now you may be thinking I'm talking about the arcade classic Mario Brothers, but like with Donkey Kong, Nintendo really liked their Game & Watches. A Mario Brothers Game & Watch was released in March of 1983, and doesn't look like the arcade counterpart of the same name at all, which was released in June of 1983. In the Game & Watch title, Mario and Luigi, as Player 1 and Player 2 respectively, work to load bottles of stuff onto trucks. The characters may appear as black figures on the screen, but the box art and promotional material, as well as the modern remakes for the Game & Watch Galleries 3 and 4, clearly show the characters as being Mario and Luigi. Luigi didn't really come into a character of his own until Super Mario Bros. 2. Like many other characters for me, I was first introduced to Ness in Super Smash Bros. Melee, though my dad called him Nestor, as in Nestor from Nintendo Power. Probably had some name confusion there, but after that I always thought of Ness as short for Nestor. Anyway, personal trivia aside, Ness first appeared as the main playable character in Mother 2, or Earthbound as it came to be known in the West, first releasing in August of 1994. for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. Ness's adventure was a wild one, using a variety of magical powers to take down aliens, mafia members, robots, living puke, and his own nightmares. It's an absolutely insane acid trip of an adventure, and it is awesome. I should probably play it sometime. If you didn't already know about F-Zero, you'd probably think Captain Falcon was some show-off, charismatic fighter in his home series. In actuality, F-Zero is all about racing, and anything Captain Falcon does in Smash is purely for Smash itself. Anytime Captain Falcon does appear physically outside of his machine, be in the cutscenes as F-Zero GX and F-Zero GP Legend, he's a lot more clumsy and not as dramatic, so I guess he's still something of a comical character in that sense. The first F-Zero game doesn't really actually have Captain Falcon or any characters anywhere. Yeah, you know they're in the machines, but you can't really see them. So the first game Captain Falcon directly appears in would be F-Zero X, released for the Nintendo 64 in July of 1998, where you can see him in the menus and the race rankings. Captain Falcon's vehicle, the Blue Falcon, isn't really even the best machine in the series, but it's good for learning the ropes with. And now we're back to Pokemon with Jigglypuff, and I'm going with the counterpart to Pikachu's title, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Blue Rescue Team. The first pair of Mystery Dungeon titles contains every Pokemon from the first 3 generations, being a total of 386 Pokemon. Man, I remember back when that was a big number. Jigglypuff is one of these recruitable Pokemon, except I have no idea where you can find them. Research tells me I can find Jigglypuff in the game, but not where. So I'm just going to take their word for it and assume Jigglypuff can be controlled like any other Pokemon on the adventure. But don't worry, Pokemon is only going to get more complicated from here. Starting off the Melee roster, we have Princess Peach. Normally in the main Mario series, she serves as the damsel in distress, the ultimate goal to rescue from Bowser at the end of the games. Peach first appeared at the end of the first Super Mario Bros., where she gained a playable role alongside the Mario Brothers and Toad in Super Mario Bros. 2, released in October of 1988. Being a reskin of a Japanese game called Yume Kojo Doki Doki Panic, the characters there were replaced with Mario characters for the Western audience. Peach swapped with the character Lena, granting her the floating and turnip patrolling abilities we see from her in later games and in Smash Bros. From then, Peach has been a frequent participant in spin-off titles and even joined her friends once more in Super Mario 3D World and Super Mario Bros. Wonder. She also got her own game on the DS for Princess Peach, and has another game of her own coming up for the Nintendo Switch. When Mario Tennis came to the Nintendo 64 in July of 2000, every character had to be assigned a doubles partner. For Mario, it's Luigi. For Wario, new character Waluigi was introduced. For Peach, they brought back Princess Daisy, who hasn't been seen since NES Open Tournament Golf 9 years earlier. Since being reintroduced to the series, Daisy has been in just about every Mario spin-off title since, usually with similar statistics as Peach, but is also capable of standing on her own character in some titles. In Smash Bros., she's a direct clone of Peach, being called an Echo Fighter, and is the only Echo Fighter in the game without any real differences from their base fighter outside of aesthetics. This is both in character for Daisy, and also doesn't really represent her character in spin-off titles well. Daisy can be controlled on the adventures of Super Mario Run and Super Mario Bros. Wonder as well, where she has her own unique attributes. Now we have the big bad Bowser. Normally he is the final boss of Mario's adventures, being the one to kidnap Peach. However, there are a few instances where he actually joins Mario if Bowser knows doing so will help himself, and only when something else threatens Peach's safety. The first of these adventures is Super Mario RPG, Legend of the Seven Stars, released for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System in March of 1996. The game starts off in typical Mario fashion. Bowser has kidnapped Peach and Mario has to rescue her. During the battle between them, however, a giant sword named Exor comes crashing into Bowser's castle, sending Mario, Bowser, and Peach across the Mushroom Kingdom. Bowser is seen a few times in Mario's adventure, but it is not until they arrive at Booster Tower that Bowser decides to join, if only to be the one to save Peach from Booster. Bowser is an absolute tank in this game, with strong attack and defense, but doesn't handle well in the speed or magical departments. Most people know about only one game in the Ice Climber series, but there's actually 2, and they appeared in that more relatively unknown game before appearing in the more noteworthy one. Versus Ice Climber was released in the arcades in October of 1984, with the home console Ice Climber releasing in January of 1985. The Versus version had more stages, enemies, and hazards than the console release, and had 2 players fighting against each other for the most points. The home console Ice Climber would be released several times over the years, and stars Nana and Popo would make appearances in other games, but Versus Ice Climber wouldn't be seen again until the Nintendo Switch's arcade archives in 2019. Sheik's character debuts in The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, where she appears at temple locations to teach Link a new song to warp to his current location easier later on. And yes, Sheik is female. That is directly confirmed, and like she even has the word she in her name, so come on. Sheik would become a staple fighter in Smash since Melee, but she wouldn't appear in the Zelda series again until the spin-off title, Hyrule Warriors, released for the Wii U in September of 2014. Like in Ocarina of Time, Sheik is actually Zelda in disguise, and plays as a fast character with light, rapid hitting attacks. Her harp can be played and upgraded to give her additional elemental boosts to her attacks. Like Link, Princess Zelda has gone through different incarnations in Smash Bros. In Melee, she was based on Ocarina of Time. She's based on Twilight Princess and Brawl in Smash 4, and a cross between A Link to the Past and A Link Between Worlds in Smash Ultimate. Normally, she doesn't have much of a playable role in the Zelda series, instead being more like Peach, though having more of an impact on the game's story. However, there are a couple of instances where Zelda can be controlled by the player, the first of which is Zelda, the Wand of Gamelon, released for the Philips CDI system in October of 1993. The CDI titles are notorious for having poor quality, meme-worthy cutscenes, and the gameplay of these games are probably even worse than those. Nintendo would rather these games just be forgotten about, but they happened, so we still acknowledge them. Wand of Gamelon is a counterpart to Link, the Faces of Evil, which are both side-scrolling titles akin to Zelda 2, starring their respective character. Wand of Gamelon has Zelda travel to the island of Gamelon to look for her father and Link, who failed to return after going out to fight Ganon, whom only the titular Wand can defeat for some reason. She has another CDI title where she is the main playable character, and Zelda first became playable in the main Zelda series with Spirit Tracks. She also appears as a playable character in Hyrule Warriors and Cadence of Hyrule.
Great! I can't wait to bomb some Dodongos!
Dr. Mario is a bit difficult to find a playable occurrence for. In his own Dr. Mario series, he stands off to the side, ignoring Mega Vitamins for the player to move around. The most you ever get to interact with Dr. Mario is by choosing him as your character representative in some titles. The first instance outside of Smash Bros. I can find where Dr. Mario is directly controllable is in Super Mario Maker, released for the Wii U in September of 2015. This one is probably a stretch, but in this title there's an item called the Mystery Mushroom. This mushroom transforms Mario into either a random character or a character of your choosing. Since every playable character from the base game of Smash 4 can be selected, Dr. Mario is one of these choices. I could use the Mystery Mushroom to cheat a bit for playable occurrences with other characters, but that'd be breaking some rules since they all play exactly the same way. Dr. Mario also appears later on as a playable racer in Mario Kart Tour, and as a costume from Mario in Super Mario Odyssey. Pichu was an easier Pokemon to find a playable occurrence for. In the Pokemon Stadium titles, there are mini-games you can play with specific Pokemon. One of these mini-games in Pokemon Stadium 2 is Pichu's Power Plant. In the mini-game, you, as Pichu, have to press certain buttons when they light up, either A for the blue button or B for the green button, while also pressing in the direction of that button. The first Pichu to fully charge their Power Plant wins the minigame. Falco may prefer the air, but the first time you get to play as him is on the ground. Star Fox 64, released for the Nintendo 64 in April of 1997, has a multiplayer versus mode. You can fight each other as R-Wings, but if you get all the medals in the main campaign and a medal from Venom in Expert mode, you unlock the option to control the pilots on foot. The characters are assigned to specific controller ports, with Falco himself assigned to player 4. There's no difference between him and the other members of Star Fox, but Falco tends to remain playable only in multiplayer versus modes of the series. It wasn't until a crossover title, Starlink Battle for Atlas, where Falco and other members of the Star Fox team became playable during the story mode. The Fire Emblem series has plenty of characters to play as, with those in Smash Bros. Games being the main lords of their respective games. Marth is the first of these characters to join the fray, being introduced in the first game in his series, Fire Emblem, Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light, released only in Japan in April of 1990, and didn't see an overseas release until the 30th anniversary translation in December of 2020. Being the main character, Marth remains as a mandatory part of the player's roster throughout the game, being unable to be unassigned and giving the player a game over if he falls in battle. On the map, he plays as any other foot soldier, being able to traverse simple fields and forests, but can't cross any bodies of water. His main weapon is a sword, and he has exclusive use to rapiers and the legendary falchion. His abilities in Smash Bros. Are more from the series as a whole, as Marth doesn't have a direct counter in his games. His shield breaker move is likely reference to his rapier, which is able to pierce armored units. Lucina joins in Smash 4, being classified as a clone of Marth, though without his signature sweet spot at the tip of his sword. She debuts in Fire Emblem Awakening, released for the 3DS in April of 2012, though under Marth's name and doesn't reveal who she really is until later in the game. Lucina is main character Chrom's daughter from the future, joining the roster of characters starting after Chapter 13. She plays similarly to her father, even having the same weapon abilities, and shares her promotion classes with him and whoever her mother is. Unlike other lords in the series, she does not give a game over if she falls in battle, and can be unassigned during normal story segments aside from a few exceptions. Lucina's popularity rose pretty quickly after her debut, to the point where she is normally chosen over Chrom or as Chrom's partner for other titles. Her fighting like Marth in Smash Bros. Makes sense for her character, but there are a few other moves she could have had as well. Young Link's trophy in Melee says he debuts in the first The Legend of Zelda, but how he is represented in Smash is from The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, released for the Nintendo 64 in November of 1998. Here, he is the variant of Link the player starts as, traversing Hyrule to gather the 3 spiritual stones to open the Door of Time and collect the Master Sword, in which he's put into a coma for 7 years. In order to make him play like adult Link in Smash, young Link utilizes weapons he can only use in The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. In Ocarina of Time, adult Link can use the bow and hookshot, while young Link can use the boomerang. In Majora's Mask, young Link can use all of these items, though the ones in Smash are still styled after Ocarina of Time. They could have added a lot more to young Link's arsenal and ultimate from Majora's Mask, even if it's just transforming into Fierce Deity Link for his final Smash, but Nintendo wanted to keep him as close to the original playstyle of Link since he got upgraded to be more like Breath of the Wild, I guess. It wasn't difficult to find a playable occurrence for Ganondorf outside of Smash, but the one playable occurrence is shared with Sheik, being Hyrule Warriors. However, the two characters play very differently, with Ganondorf being more of a slow powerhouse character using magic and large swords to destroy foes around him. Additionally, a new mode was added later as DLC, where his beast form, Ganon, can be controlled to defeat the other bosses in the game. Ganondorf has used large swords in several of his appearances, but wasn't until Ultimate when he was able to use them in Smash, unless you count the one custom move from Smash 4. Back to Pokemon, Mewtwo is regarded as one of the strongest and most popular Pokemon in the series, and usually serves as a secret post-game capture. He does appear in the red and blue rescue teams alongside Pikachu and Jigglypuff, but I'm talking about Explorers of Time here. Mewtwo appeared in the Aegis Cave, a cave where you can find all the Reggie and unknown Pokemon. Mewtwo is on the Aegis Cave pit floor and he has a capture rate of negative 22%, and only if you have the mystery part or secret slab on you. That's some pretty nutty requirements there. Mewtwo behaves similarly in other Mystery Dungeon titles, and also serves as a boss character in Pokemon Stadium's The Pokemon Tournament, where he is able to be unlocked as a playable character. Our boy Roy is an interesting case for Smash Bros., as Melee was his first appearance overall. His game, Fire Emblem The Binding Blade, had been delayed and wouldn't release until March of 2002, 3 months after the release of Smash Melee. In terms of Fire Emblem gameplay, he behaves similarly to other infantry lords before him, using swords as his weapon of choice. Lore-wise, he's based a lot of his fighting style from his father, Eliwood, and various other teachers. The way we see him in Smash Bros. Comes from skills granted by his personal legendary weapon, the Binding Blade or Sword of Seals, however you want to call it. Roy's final Smash, for example, is directly based on the animation that plays when Roy attacks with it in his game. Chrom debuts as the main lord of Fire Emblem Awakening, and remains the central playable unit throughout. But since I talked about that game already with Lucina, the next game Chrom is playable in becomes Project Cross Zone 2, released for the 3DS in November of 2015. This is a massive crossover fighting/strategy RPG with characters from Namco, Sega, Capcom, and Nintendo. Chrom, alongside Lucina, appears first during one of the prologue chapters, and won't appear again until after you've all been launched into a large tree. The duo utilizes their own falchions, as well as lances in Chrom's case and bows in Lucina's. In Smash Ultimate, Chrom comes in as an Echo Fighter of Roy, which doesn't really match his playstyle all that well. He was given an Aether move like Ike's, but there's a lot more content to pull from that would have benefited Chrom's character more. He just feels like a lazy inclusion, and that makes sense considering how late into development he was added, but it just kinda sucks to me since Chrom is one of my favorite video game characters and just how underdone he has been. Yes, I'm upset about it. The character of Mr. Game & Watch from Smash Bros. Is an overall representative of the Game & Watch series as a whole, rather than being from any one specific game. The first Game & Watch game to be released was called Ball, released in 1980. In this, you play as a juggler who has to keep all of his balls in the air. The balls get progressively faster as you continue, and dropping one costs a life. Other games represented by Mr. Game & Watch include Fire, Vermin, Judge, and even the Mario Bros. Title I talked about earlier. Moving on to Brawl's roster, we have Meta Knight. Meta Knight first appeared as a boss in Kirby's Adventure, remade for the Game Boy Advance as Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland in October of 2002. In this remake, there is an extra game called Meta Nightmare, in which you play as Meta Knight and race through all the main story levels of the game to defeat King Dedede within a time limit. Meta Knight plays like a cross between Kirby's sword and wing abilities with some improved mechanics. To unlock Meta Nightmare, you first have to complete the main story, as well as the extra mode. Pit got his start in Kid Icarus, released for the Famicom in December of 1986. When Medusa attacked Skyworld and captured all of Palutena's forces, Pit was able to escape the underworld and set out to recover the 3 sacred treasures to defeat Medusa. Pit's only weapons at the time were a bow and arrow, along with the hammers he collected to be used in dungeons to free the Centurions. It wasn't until Brawl when his moveset started seeing an expansion. Kid Icarus was a brutal game back in the day, and Pit was able to return to the spotlight with Kid Icarus Uprising, which is my favorite single-series game so far. Speaking of Kid Icarus Uprising, which released for the Nintendo 3DS in March of 2012, it completely changed up the original Kid Icarus formula, giving Pit full 3D movement on the ground and being an on-rail shooter in the air. Among the many new characters introduced in the game is Dark Pit, Pit's doppelganger created by the Mirror of Truth at the end of Chapter 5. During the main campaign, Dark Pit challenges Pit on several occurrences and frequently tries to knock Pit down in conversation. During Chapter 22, Pit becomes injured and Dark Pit has to help him recover at the Weavern Spring. Dark Pit becomes a playable character for this chapter, but there's a place to play as him sooner. The game has a multiplayer arena mode, called Together Mode, with 2 forms of play, Light vs. Dark and Free For All. In Light vs. Dark, you are randomly assigned to either the Light team or the Dark team. During the battle, if your team is knocked down far enough, the next player to fall becomes that team's respective angel. The Light team has Pit, and the Dark team has Dark Pit. If you defeat the opposing angel, your team wins. Dark Pit plays the same as Pit, an attribute reflected in Super Smash Bros., with the only differences being the weapons Dark Pit uses to fight. The first Metroid game was remade for the Game Boy Advance as Metroid Zero Mission, released in February of 2004. After defeating Mother Brain, Samus' ship gets attacked when trying to leave, and she crashes back on the planet Zebes, damaging her power suit in the process. She's left with her paralyzer and her Under Armour skin suit, which Smash Bros. Calls the Zero Suit. Samus has to traverse the following area in this way until she's able to battle the boss at the end of Chozodia and gain the legendary power suit. Samus' paralyzer is a simple gun, with the whip and other athletic movements being Smash originals. Zero Suit Samus is playable once more at the end of Metroid Other M during the escape sequence, and also appears during cutscenes in Metroid Prime 3 and Metroid Dread. Mario's evil counterpart, Wario, first appeared as the final boss of Super Mario Land 2, 6 Golden Coins. The next game, Wario Land Super Mario Land 3, released for the Game Boy in January of 1994, stars Wario instead of Mario. Wario's goal is to collect a golden statue of Princess Peach from the pirate Captain Syrup. Wario's platforming skills are more unorthodox compared to Mario's, as he tends to just brute force his way through everything. He'll still use his power-ups like becoming a vampire or having his face swell up to float through the air. Wario's adventures are definitely on the weird side, but that's what makes them fun. Wario continues these treasure hunting adventures in later platforming titles, and also managed to build his own video game making company, WarioWare Incorporated. Metal Gear is a long-running series mostly comprised of tactical espionage missions and explosions. The main playable character in this series is usually a Special Forces operative, the most popular of which being Solid Snake, debuting in the first game in the series, Metal Gear, for the MSX2 home computer system in July of 1987. The game has a top-down perspective where you play as Snake, a rookie member who needs to infiltrate the enemy base without being detected. Snake will collect a variety of weapons during this infiltration, which he will have to use to take down the bosses he encounters as he progresses. You also need to rescue hostages that have been captured, and you get promoted if you manage to rescue all of them, or demoted if any of them die. The Snake in Smash is based on his appearance in Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty, and is the first non-Nintendo character to be introduced into Smash Bros. Fire Emblem Path of Radiance, released for the GameCube in April of 2005, was the first Fire Emblem title to be in 3D. The starring character for this entry is Ike, who, unlike the previous main characters in the series, is a mercenary in the Grail Mercenaries group. Being the leader's son, he has received extensive training and is a strong unit from the start of the game. Despite not being a lord, he still shares the same characteristics of them, having swords as his weapon of choice, and the movement of other infantry units. He does have exclusive access to some skills like Aether and the holy weapon Ragnail. His appearance in Smash Bros. Is based on his Path of Radiance appearance in Brawl, his Radiant Dawn appearance in Smash 4, and then both appearing in Ultimate. I can finally talk about a main Pokemon game now. All the Pokemon titles have you play as a Pokemon trainer, with the first games, Pokemon Red version and Pokemon Green version, launching for the Game Boy in February of 1996. Your ultimate goal is to defeat the gym leaders in the region, collect their gym badges, and make your way to the end of the Elite Four and challenge the Pokemon Champion. To do this, you have to capture and train creatures called Pokemon, building up a team strong enough to take on these challenges. Every Pokemon has their own movesets, strengths, and weaknesses, which you need to take into account to make sure you come out on top during battles. The original duo of games started with 151 Pokemon, but are now being over 1,000. Good luck catching them all. For Squirtle and Ivysaur, I'll be talking about Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Explorers of Darkness and Explorers of Time, the latter of which released for the Nintendo DS in April 2009. Squirtle is one of the Pokemon you can become at the start of the games through the personality quiz, but also found in the unlockable Lake of Far. Ivysaur found in the Mystic Forest, as well as the Sky Summit in Explorers of Sky. Like the other Pokemon Mystery Dungeon titles, they are able to be recruited and used during battles and missions. Squirtle is also common during minigames and other titles and spin-offs, but Ivysaur doesn't make very many appearances. Charizard also appears in the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon series, but he's a playable character in other titles. In PokePark Wii, Pikachu's Adventure, released for the Wii, of course, in December of 2009, Charizard is playable in the Salamance's Air Ace attraction. In this attraction, you have to fly through the air and destroy targets with projectile attacks. Charizard is able to score 18,000 points with their bonus, making him the third best option for the challenge. Charizard is also a playable fighter in Pokken Tournament, and was a separate fighter of his own in Smash 4. When Donkey Kong was reintroduced to the gaming world in Donkey Kong Country, released for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System in November of 1994, he brought along his little buddy, Diddy Kong. Diddy Kong is tasked with guarding Donkey Kong's banana horde for a night, though he ends up defeated by the Kremlings and gets locked up, along with the banana horde being stolen. Upon rescuing him, Diddy Kong plays relatively the same as Donkey Kong, the only difference being unable to use the hand slap mode. In later games, Diddy Kong becomes a character of his own, being equipped with jetpacks and peanut pop guns. Since appearing in Donkey Kong Country, Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong have made frequent appearances in Mario spin-off titles. Mother 3 has been a long-standing joke in the gaming community. After a complicated development history, it finally released for the Game Boy Advance in April 2006, only in Japan. The game stars Lucas, and cycles between him and his family and friends as playable characters in the other chapters. A group called the Pig Mask Army has been causing trouble, and serves as the primary antagonists. The game is a whole mess of events, with Mother 3's cult status mainly coming from it just never leaving Japan. Lucas got top billing over Ness and Brawl, became DLC in Smash 4, and an unlockable character in Ultimate. He fights similar to Ness, but with key differences between their special moves. When Sega started developing consoles, they needed a character that was able to compete with Mario's success. Enter Sonic the Hedgehog, who debuted as the sole playable character in the game of his name, released for the Sega Genesis in June of 1991. The key feature of Sonic's character is that he goes really fast, in order to show off the processing power of the system, an idea that stems from the developers needing to complete World 1-1 of Super Mario Bros. As fast as they can to return to the level they were in. Sonic has remained a playable character in every title since, aside from some spin-off titles that start as friends or enemies instead. When it came to Smash Bros. Brawl, most of his regular attacks were inspired by another Sega game called Virtua Fighter. King Dedede got his start as Kirby's final boss in Kirby's Dream Land, and since has either been a final boss, a mind-controlled boss, or a misunderstood good guy. But in some cases he'll actually partner up with Kirby if he feels like Kirby needs his help to take on a stronger villain. The first case of this is Kirby 64, The Crystal Shards, released for the Nintendo 64 in March of 2000. Kirby first encounters King Dedede getting possessed by dark matter and has to fight him. After being rescued and joining Kirby's team, King Dedede lets Kirby ride on his back in a few locations, in which the player controls the king and is able to destroy walls and enemies with his giant hammer. King Dedede can also be selected alongside Kirby and his other friends in the side minigames, and is playable in several other Kirby games later on. Nintendo is known for making a new IP almost every time they introduce a new system in order to show off the console's capabilities. For the Nintendo GameCube, this game was Pikmin, released in October of 2001. Here we are introduced to Captain Olimar, who crash lands on a mysterious planet. On this planet, Olimar encounters little creatures he calls Pikmin, named after the Pick carrots on his home planet. The Pikmin are willing to help Olimar repair his ship to return home, and Olimar does this by commanding the Pikmin and what they need to do in order to progress. To create more Pikmin, objects are carried to nests called onions, which will spawn more Pikmin to use. Olimar only has a few days to fix his ship before his life support gives out on him, and the outcome of his adventure is determined by how much of his ship was fixed in that time frame. The first of our Smash Bros. Costume characters is Alf, one of the heroes of Pikmin 3, released for the Wii U in July of 2013. He, along with fellow space explorers Brittany and Charlie, returned to the planet from the previous games they have since named PNF 404. Get it? It's a pun. Anyway, Alpha and crew are now exploring this planet to bring back food supplies, which their own planet seems to have been depleted due to a rapidly growing population. Similar to Olimar, Alpha and Peeps end up crashing on the planet and now have to work on both finding each other and finding supplies to rebuild it. Luckily for them, the Pikmin seem to be willing to help with this again. Previous game captains Olimar and Louie are also on the planet, but they give Alpha and others a hard time with their problems. The ending up in them depends on how much fruit juice they've blended. For Lucario, we're returning to Pokepark Wii Pikachu's Adventure, as the attractions Lucario takes part in are different from Charizard. Lucario takes part in 4 attractions, being Venusaur's Vine Swing, Tangril's Swing Along, Absol's Hurdle Bounce, and Rayquaza's Balloon Panic. Lucario is pretty high tier for these attractions, scoring better bonus points than most of the other Pokemon. In Rayquaza's attraction, he's the best until the player unlocks the Oxus. Lucario also appears as a fighter in Pokken Tournament and can be recruited in Mystery Dungeon titles, starting from Explorers of Time and Darkness. R.O.B is a weird one here. He released as a physical peripheral for the Nintendo Entertainment System when the system launched in October of 1985. In other words, you could actually play with, touch, and smell R.O.B as he played specific games with you. But as far as his appearances in video games go, the first time he shows up as a playable character is in Mario Kart DS, released for the Nintendo DS in November of 2005. R.O.B starts off locked, but once you acquire gold trophies in all of either the Nitro or Retro Mirror Cups, you'll be able to play as a robotic buddy. Apparently, the guy is heavy enough to match Bowser in terms of weight, making him the fastest and heaviest character alongside the Koopa King. Outside of Super Smash Bros. And the Smash 4 based costumes in Super Mario Maker, this marks R.O.B's only playable appearance so far. Even if you weren't around for it at the time, Zelda fans probably know about the criticism surrounding the art style choices for The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker. Here we see a cel-shaded Link, a far more cartoonish version of the character from any other incarnation seen so far. However, there was another cel-shaded Zelda game that ended up beating Wind Waker to release. The Legend of Zelda: Four Swords, released as a pack with a Link to the Past for the Game Boy Advance on December 2nd, 2002, 11 days before the Japanese release of Wind Waker. In Four Swords, you had to be linked up to multiple GBAs, as the game did not support single player. You and 1 to 3 buddies/siblings/imaginary friends had to work together to solve puzzles and complete environmental dungeons, and you had to get as many rupees as possible in order to be rewarded with special keys needed to open the final area. The game was later redone so you can play by yourself with a special anniversary edition released for the Nintendo DSi in September of 2011. Since appearing in Star Fox 64, Wolf O'Donnell and his mercenary team, Star Wolf, has been frequent antagonists to Fox and his team. In many cases, Wolf is hired by Andross to help take down Star Fox. During Star Fox Assault, released for the GameCube in February 2005, Wolf decides to help Fox take down the new villain called the Aperoids. Though the player can't control Wolf during the main story, they can unlock him to be used in the game's multiplayer versus mode by collecting all ally medals in the mission mode. Like the previous versus modes between the other characters, Wolf plays no differently from everyone else, having the same access to the weapons and vehicles that can be used. We're moving into Smash 3DS and Wii U with Villager. In most Animal Crossing titles, you move into a new house, have to keep it up, plow fields, talk to anthropomorphic animals, and pay your mortgage. Fun! The first of these is Dobutsu no Mori, or Animal Forest, released for Japanese Nintendo 64s in April 2001. The game later received an expansion, which is what was released overseas as Animal Crossing. Everyone's town is unique, being randomly generated each time you start a game. Additionally, the game runs on real time, with an internal battery keeping the clock going even when the game is off, and certain events only happening at specific times. By talking to the townsfolk, collecting things to expand your own collection, and just generally being a helpful and hardworking lad, you can collect the bells you need to keep your home. Mega Man and his series got its start with the first Mega Man game, released for the Nintendo Entertainment System in December of 1987. Here, Mega Man has to take on corrupted robots that were meant to better human society. After being converted into a robot, Mega Man is able to adapt to his challenges by acquiring the skills of the robots he defeats. Only by defeating the 6 robot masters does the way to the final challenge open, the confrontation with the one behind it all, Dr. Wily. Later titles instead usually have 8 robot masters to defeat, and either other Mega Man variants or one of his buddies has to defeat them. Rosalina makes her grand debut in Super Mario Galaxy, where she serves as the mother of the Starlight creatures, the Lumas, and heads the Comet Observatory. In Galaxy, she's more of a supporting role, with her first playable appearance being in Mario Kart Wii, released for the Wii in April 2008. You can unlock her by getting 1-star rankings or higher in all Mirror Cup races, playing a total of 4,950 races, or by having a Super Mario Galaxy save file on the system. Unlike the other princesses, Rosalina is classified as a heavy racer, and improves speed, handling, and mini-turbo statistics. Luma is even along for the ride. Since his appearance, Rosalina and/or Luma have been frequently playable in other Mario spin-off titles, and Rosalina is also playable as an unlockable character in Super Mario 3D World. The Punch-Out series got its start in the arcades, where the player enters a boxing ring to take on other challengers. The arcade protagonist didn't have a name, instead being simply the Challenger. It wasn't until the next Punch-Out installment for the NES in October of 1987 where he is given the name Little Mac. True to his name, Mac is much shorter than his opponents, and often has to jump to reach his opponent's weak points. Despite his size, Mac packs a powerful punch, and is able to reach the top of the WBBA to take on the likes of Mike Tyson, Mr. Dream, and even Donkey Kong in the Wii game. Greninja brings us back to the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon series with Pokemon Super Mystery Dungeon, released for the Nintendo 3DS in September of 2015. This iteration of the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon series brings in Pokemon introduced during Pokemon X and Y, which of course includes Greninja. Unfortunately, like with Jigglypuff, information on Pokemon location seems incomplete by my research. R.O.B tells me you can use connection orbs to meet Pokemon, with Greninja being available in Noi Town after the epilogue. I also know Pokemon can evolve after you beat the game, so perhaps if Froakie is on your team, they can eventually evolve into Greninja? When the Wii launched in November of 2006, it brought along a user avatar creation system, where you can make personalized characters called Miis. The Miis are able to be played in a variety of games, the first of which was Wii Sports, which came packaged with the Nintendo Wii at launch. The Miis partake in 5 sports, being baseball, bowling, golf, boxing, and tennis. The Miis have even more games of their own on the Wii, have their own collection of things to do in Street Class Mii Plaza for the 3DS, and even join Mario in his sports and kart games. In Smash, the Miis have original movesets based on hand-to-hand, sword, and projectile combats, and are the only characters to be represented by Smash itself. Palutena was a difficult one to find a playable occurrence for. In Kid Icarus and Kid Icarus of Myths and Monsters, she's only seen at the end of the game as Pit's ultimate goal to rescue. In Kid Icarus Uprising, she's talking to Pit throughout most of the whole game, and is the one to help him fly and grant him powers. In Chapter 20, she has been controlled by the Chaos King and fights Pit as a boss. However, in Kid Icarus Uprising, there is another mode where you can kind of play as her. The game came packaged with cards that could be read with the 3DS's AR camera, and more cards could be collected through other promotional materials. Palutena is one of the cards that comes with the game itself, and you can choose to have her fight other characters. Each character card has a set of statistics that are displayed in the game, and you kind of just watch the fight go down. I don't know if this counts as a playable occurrence for Palutena, since all you do is set her card down, but you can play with that card physically, so maybe I'll just let you guys be the judge of that. Or maybe I just wanted to talk about the AR cards, because they're actually pretty freaking cool. Maybe I should have included the Pokemon TCG in this list in that case. Pac-Man is the oldest character on this list, debuting in the arcade Pac-Man title in May of 1980. The goal here is to gather as many pellets as you can, while avoiding the ghosts that are trying to attack you. Larger pellets turn the ghosts into edible creatures, allowing you to score points from them and return them to the center of the map. The arcade is a classic title that has seen many releases over the years, apparently even through Google itself, as a playable browser game of Pac-Man came up while researching information for this. Robin is the third character on this list to come from Fire Emblem Awakening, and like Chrom and Lucina, his next playable appearance is in another crossover title. Codenamed Steam, released for the 3DS in March of 2015, starred several characters from other pieces of media of North American history, like Henry Fleming from the Red Badge of Courage, the characters from The Wizard of Oz, and characters from Fire Emblem. Robin, along with Smash 4 reps Marth, Ike, and Lucina, can only be added to the game through the use of Amiibo, Nintendo's take on Toys to Life figures that have an NFC chip their systems can read. In Robin's case, he comes equipped with a Levin Sword and Thoron Tome. It's pretty hilarious seeing Fire Emblem characters using conventional and magical weapons when every other character is using steampunk-based weapons, but they're also all fighting aliens under the leadership of Abraham Lincoln, so what even is normal here? Xenoblade Chronicles had a long development history, but it was first released for the Wii in June of 2010. The game stars a young man named Sheik, who is a scientist from Colony 9. He is the lone survivor of an expedition that found the Monado, a powerful sword-like figure that can give its wielder great strength at the cost of physical damage. Sheik can apparently use this item with no issue, and is even able to give him visions of the future. Sheik attempts to use this weapon for the first time when his colony is attacked by mechanical creatures called the Nakan, but fails to understand what the visions are showing him, which leads to his friend Fior getting killed. This prompts Sheik to set out to find the killer called Metalface, learn more about what the Monado is, and how to handle the visions that he keeps getting. Mario's first adventure on the GameCube was Super Mario Sunshine, which introduced Bowser's son named Bowser Jr. Under the guise of Shadow Mario, Bowser Jr. serves as a frequent antagonist for Mario and continues this role in later titles. Bowser Jr. first became playable in Mario Golf Toadstool Tour, released for the GameCube in July of 2003. He starts off as a locked character, with the player needing to complete the 18-hole birdie challenge to unlock him. His Shadow Mario counterpart can also be unlocked by completing all ring attack holes. I don't know enough about golf to determine how good of a player these characters are, so I'm moving on. In Super Smash Bros., Bowser Jr. has a unique attribute to him, being that all of his costume slots are filled by other characters, those being the 7 Koopalings. Originally set as Bowser's children before Jr. himself came along, the Koopalings served as bosses for Mario and Luigi in Super Mario Bros. 3. Since reappearing in Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga, the Koopalings have become frequent bosses in other titles, but their first playable occurrence wasn't until over a decade later in Mario Kart 8, released for the Wii U in May of 2014. All 7 of these guys are locked, obtained once you collect enough gold trophies, though are all readily available in the Switch port. Ray and Morton are the heaviest of them all, with Iggy and Ludwig being medium weights, and Lemmy, Larry, and Windy rounding out the lightweights. The Koopalings become playable once more in the 3DS remake of Superstar Saga. When new DLC characters were introduced in Smash 4, Ryu was the one leading it all, with Ken being included as his Echo Fighter in Ultimate. Both of these characters got their start with the first Street Fighter game, released for the arcades in August of 1987. Ryu has to fight his way up through a worldwide martial arts tournament, fighting through 10 matches in a best 2 of 3 fight. At any time, a second player can challenge player 1, and they will always play as Ken. Both Ryu and Ken play identically in this game, with both branching off into their own fighting styles in later titles, while still keeping their basics intact. The two friendly rivals appear in pretty much every title together, which is why I'm grouping them together here, and in the case of one showing up on their own, the other is sure to follow soon after. Cloud Strife got his start in the 7th game of the Final Fantasy series, aptly named Final Fantasy VII, released for the PlayStation in January of 1997. Cloud is an ex-soldier mercenary who joins an organization to stop a world-controlling megacorporation called Shinra from using the planet's life essence as an energy source. He joins with characters like Barret and Tifa to take down Shinra, and encounters Sephiroth, someone from Cloud's past who is thought to have died. Cloud is perhaps the most recognizable character in the Final Fantasy series due to the game's popularity, and introducing him into Smash Bros. Was a big deal at the time. I remember people who thought Square Enix was never going to take part in it, and these kinds of surprises continued to happen with just about every character since. Corrin is the main Lord character of the Fire Emblem Fates trilogy, released for the Nintendo 3DS in June of 2015. As a first in the series, the player-created character is the main Lord. The game was marketed with their decisions impacting how the game would turn out, though that ultimately just came down to what version of the game you buy. Corrin is capable of wielding a chainsaw sword called the Yato, and is also part dragon, with their dragon blood being able to alter terrain around them in specific locations. Other friendly members of Royal Blood are capable of instantaneous landscaping as well. In Smash, Corrin is the first Lord character to utilize non-sword skills in their movement, being able to send out paralyzing energy and extend their arms and legs into lance-like spears. Corrin is also similar to Roy in terms of release, as it was the first time non-Asian players could play as them, Corrin releasing for Smash 4 16 days before the North American release of Fire Emblem Fates. After awakening from a 500-year-old sleep at the bottom of the lake, Bayonetta discovers she has no memories of her past, who she is, nor where she is. It's not long until she finds out she's the main character of her own series, Bayonetta, the first game releasing for the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 back in October of 2009. Bayonetta is a member of the Umbra Witches, which are followers of darkness, who are fighting against the Lumen Sages, which are followers of light. They both guard certain treasures called Eyes of the World, which are used to oversee the correct flow of time. These factions mysteriously disappeared 500 years ago, and Bayonetta happens to hold what she believes to be the Eye from the Umbra Witches, the Left Eye of Darkness. She then sets out on a hack-and-slash adventure against angels and demons to find the right Eye of Light, and meets characters that have ties to her past, like fellow Umbra Witch Jean, a man named Luca that blames Bayonetta for his father's death, and a little girl named Cereza that believes Bayonetta to be her mother. Truly a tangled tale. Finally, we reached Smash Ultimate, and the first characters revealed to join were the Inklings. The Splatoon series got its start on the Wii U in May of 2015, which involves Squid Kids shooting their terrain and each other with ink. The Inklings use a variety of weapons and gear to get this job done, ranging from large paintbrushes and paint rollers to full-on sniper rifles, and are capable of hiding and swimming in their own colors. The goal of the multiplayer mode is to cover the arena in as much ink of your color as possible, with the single-player mode focusing on you taking down an opposing army known as the Octarians. The Castlevania series got its start on the Famicom Disk System with the title Akumejo Dracula in September of 1986, where it stars rugged vampire hunter Simon Belmont. Similar to Metroid, the game is a side-scrolling platformer exploration title, where Simon is able to move, jump, and use the vampire killer whip to attack. Simon collects other weapons to use against his enemies and has a health meter that depletes when he gets hit. There are 18 total levels in this game, ending in a battle against Dracula himself. The Belmont line continues in later games. Whether they are a sequel or prequel to one another, it is usually a Belmont that handles the fight against the vampires. Castlevania, Rondo of Blood, released for the PC Engine Super CD-ROM 2 system in October of 1993, starred a descendant of Simon's, Richter Belmont. Taking place 101 years after the first Castlevania, Rondo of Blood has Richter go after Dracula after he kidnapped Richter's girlfriend, Annette. Fundamentally, the game plays similarly to the first Castlevania, though with new weapons, alternate routes, and another playable character that can be rescued, his distant cousin, Maria Renard. Simon and Richter, as they appear in Smash, take inspiration from one another, as they function the same, yet perform moves from their counterpart that they themselves have not used in their own games. The Donkey Kong Country games had the Kongs versus the Kremlings, a crocodile race led by King K. Rool. Rool was the final boss in these games, but after Donkey Kong 64, he was making scattered appearances before dropping off entirely after 2008. In one of these titles, DK King of Swing, released for the Game Boy Advance in February of 2005, Rool has his first playable appearance in the Jungle Jam mode. The Jungle Jam is the setting of the game as a whole, a tournament that was supposed to be held until King K. Rool stole all the medals. Rool can be unlocked for the use of this mode after collecting 12 gold medals, where he is the most powerful character. Interestingly, his partner in this mode is Bubbles, the main character of Clu Clu Land, which DK King of Swing is based on. King K. Rool was later playable in Donkey Kong Barrel Blast and Mario Super Sluggers, before arriving in Smash Bros. Isabelle is usually a secretary character for the player or Tom Nook in the Animal Crossing series. Her first playable appearance was actually in Mario Kart 8, where she came in with the Animal Crossing Cross Mario Kart 8 DLC pack. But since we talked about Mario Kart 8 with the Koopalings, the next game where Isabelle is playable is Animal Crossing Amiibo Festival. This game gets bagged on a ton, and if you've played it or seen any other video covering it, you can tell why. Amiibo Festival focuses heavily on the use of Animal Crossing themed Amiibo figures, Isabelle being one of them. Control is handled almost exclusively through tapping the Amiibo, switching to the A button to progress through dialogue or menus. Honestly, I'm not even sure if I should count this as a playable occurrence, since you don't actually interact with Isabelle or anyone else aside from their Amiibo, but I included the AR cards for Palutena, and I didn't think I needed to exclude interacting with physical material as controlling a character until this far into the script. So, I guess I wrote myself into a corner for that one. Should I have included Stack Up and Gyromite for R.O.B in that case? I didn't think Amiibo Festival would be the game to make you question everything here. If we are going through with physical figures being relevant to this list, then the next game is kind of that, but also not really related wise. The Pokemon trading card game is massively popular, and it decided to go full 3D with the Pokemon trading figure game, where instead of cards, you collect physical figures and follow similar rules to the TCG. In April 2016, this game went digital on smartphones with Pokemon Duel. You can collect digital Pokemon figurines and battle them against each other, using their own abilities and trying to get to the end marker on your opponent's side of a battle grid. One of these Pokemon you can collect is Incineroar, found by evolving Litlin into Terracat, then Terracat into Incineroar. Incineroar has Fire and Dark type moves, making him a powerful fighter for the team. Unfortunately, the service for Pokemon Duel ended on Halloween 2019, making the game no longer available. And that is it for the Pokemon. I don't need to go over any more spin-offs or anything for them evermore in this list at all. Smash Ultimate's DLC lineup began with Piranha Plant, a generic figure in Bowser's army. Normally found in warp pipes, they pop out and do a variety of attacks toward Mario. The one in Smash Bros. Brings a pot or pipe with it to get around, and Smash is regarded as Plant's first playable appearance. But it's not. Kinda. In the Mario Party series, every playable character plays pretty much the same, with the only real differences being what die block they provide in some games. In Mario Party 3, released for the Nintendo 64 in December of 2000, there is Duel Mode, an additional party mode game where you battle against another player. Joining you in this mode are up to 2 allies consisting of generic enemy or ally characters in the series, one of these being Piranha Plant. It is capable of dealing 3 points of damage to place in front of you, but only has 1 health point to defend with, and costs 5 points per turn to keep. Your main character is the one you hit the die with, but since Piranha Plant will follow or lead you around and you have no real control over the movement of the characters on the board anyway, I say it counts. Don't go changing the wikis for this though, I'm probably fudging it a bit too much. The proper start to Smash Ultimate's Fighter Pass began with Joker, a high school student falsely accused of assault in Persona 5. released for the PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4 in September of 2016. After being transferred to a new school, he and some other students end up awakening to special powers. They become a secret group of vigilantes called the Phantom Thieves of Hearts, capable of exploring a place called the Metaverse, a realm created by human desires. Joker and the others use their powers to steal the evil intentions of adults, changing their hearts in the process. Some of these intentions can get pretty messed up though, so don't go expecting this game about superhero kids traversing a metaverse to be anything like a DC or Marvel game. Wait, that's probably not a good comparison. The Dragon Quest heroes were my personal top request for Smash Bros., so I was very excited to see them come in. Ultimate brought in 4 heroes, being those from Dragon Quest XI, released for the 3DS in July of 2017, Dragon Quest III, released for the Nintendo Entertainment System in February of 1998, Dragon Quest IV, released for the Nintendo Entertainment System in February of 1990, and Dragon Quest VIII, released for the PlayStation 2 in November of 2004. Each of the games follow a main hero as they band together a group of characters to defeat a villain usually bent on either world domination or world destruction. In Dragon Quest IV and XI's, ally characters have their individual segments they are the lead of, and in Dragon Quest III and IV you can also play as a female heroine. Most of the heroes in the series utilize a mix of sword play and magical skills, learning more moves to use in battle as they level up. It may not have been the first virtual RPG series, but Dragon Quest introduced a lot of features to the genre that other popular franchises like Final Fantasy and Pokemon were based upon. Banjo the Bear got his start as a racer in Diddy Kong Racing, but Smash also features his bird partner, Kazooie. The two got their first adventure, Banjo Kazooie, released for the Nintendo 64 in June of 1998, where they worked together to rescue Banjo's sister, Tooty, from the evil witch, Gruntilda. The general idea of the game was inspired by Super Mario 64 in terms of platforming and collectathon, but with their own worlds to explore and moves to use. By collecting a certain number of puzzle pieces called Jiggies, Banjo and Kazooie are able to open up additional levels they must use their skills in to gather more Jiggies and open up Gruntilda's final chamber. Later games in the series haven't done as well, but the first game has remained a classic and is regarded as one of the best games on the system. The Fatal Fury series was created by Street Fighter creator Takeshi Nishiyama after leaving Capcom to join SNK in order to create a game with a more engaging storyline and characters. The first game, Fatal Fury King of Fighters, released for arcades in November of 1991 and then the Neo Geo a month later. The game stars Terry Bogard, who, along with his brother Andy Bogard, swore to learn martial arts in order to avenge their adoptive father that was killed by Geese Howard. A decade later, they learn Geese has organized a new tournament called the King of Fighters. The two brothers reunite and enter the tournament in hopes of taking down Geese directly. Unlike previous fighting games in the genre, Fatal Fury introduced a 2-lane setup. Being 1 lane in the foreground and 1 lane in the background, fighters are able to freely jump between. With an emphasis on storytelling and special moves, Fatal Fury and its sub-series quickly stood out among other fighting games. A representative from Fire Emblem Three Houses coming to Smash was completely expected. It just came at a weird time after a lineup of nothing but third-party characters. Byleth is the main player character of Three Houses, being a mercenary turned professor at the Garreg Mach Monastery. However, there is another Fire Emblem game they appear in before Three Houses released. Fire Emblem Heroes, released for smartphone devices in February of 2017, revolves around the player summoning characters from other Fire Emblem games to deploy them in battles against other characters from the series. In an update on July 22, 2019, Three Houses characters were introduced, including the female variant of Byleth. Three Houses released on July 26, 4 days later, which is also when the male variant of Byleth was introduced to heroes and able to be summoned. These characters were added simply as a promotion for the new Fire Emblem game, and it meant players were able to play as one of the Byleths, as well as the 3 house leaders, early. The second fighter pass for Smash Ultimate was led by Min Min, a fighter from ARMS, a new Nintendo IP that launched for the Nintendo Switch in June of 2017. Min Min's motif is styled after ramen noodles, and she works at a noodle restaurant called the Nintendo Noodle House. Min Min is able to hold a charge permanently, her left arm transforming into a dragon arm, which sets her apart from other fighters that can only hold a charge for a few seconds, though she will lose the charge if she gets knocked down or her left arm gets disabled. She puts her martial arts skills to use as well, being able to execute kicks with high attack power. She's pretty average when it comes to speed and jumping, and her lightweight gets her knocked around a bit easier than others, but once she has her dragon arm ready, she'll really have a leg up on the competition. Steve's reveal in Smash Bros. Was so monumental that Twitter couldn't even handle it. Minecraft, released for computer systems in May of 2009, is a game where you mine materials and you craft materials. Then you use those materials to build things. And then you blow it all up. Steve is regarded as the main character of the game, with Alex being added as a separate model in the 1.8 version of the Java edition. The player characters function exactly the same, as they all need to have the same access to resources and abilities. Many characters can also be included as modified skins of Steve or Alex, allowing you to play as virtually anyone you want. The easy to pick up, endless creativity aspect of Minecraft made it accessible to everyone, and became the best-selling video game of all time. Debuting alongside Cloud as an antagonist, Sephiroth is the result of a series of Shinra experiments called the Genova Project. A being called Genova had cells taken from her and injected into fetuses of women working in Shinra, one of these being Lucretia, who became Sephiroth's mother. I hope I'm saying that right. Initially hailed as a hero soldier, once Sephiroth learns the truth of his origins, he turns on the town and sets it on fire, killing Cloud's mother and several other inhabitants in the process. There's a lot more to Sephiroth and Cloud's story, but his first playable appearance wasn't even in the Final Fantasy title. Geese is a 3D fighting game similar to Tekken and Soul Calibur, with original characters designed by Tetsuya Nomura, who also designed the characters in Final Fantasy. This connection allowed Final Fantasy VII characters to be included, with Sephiroth appearing as a playable fighter in the PlayStation version of the game exclusively, released in December of 1998. Pyra and Mithra are two halves of a personified weapon known as a Blade, debuting in Xenoblade Chronicles 2 for the Nintendo Switch in December of 2017. They are specifically the legendary Aegis, of which Mithra is the true form of. Their partner, Rex, is a driver, which is someone that is able to connect with the Blade and fight alongside them in battle. As they form a party to reach Elysium and find a way to stop the world's continent from sinking, more of Pyra's past is revealed. Mithra locked herself up due to the guilt over her actions during a war 500 years ago, and Pyra is the kind of person she wanted to become. Once Rex builds a strong enough bond with the two of them, the third half of the Aegis, Numa, is formed and bestows Rex with the powers of Master Driver. Kazuya Mishima had a harsh childhood. In the first Tekken game, released for arcades in September of 1994, he was born into a loving family with his parents, Heihachi Mishima and Kazumi, treating him like the special boy he is. His father even taught him martial arts. When Heihachi overthrew his father's business and turned it into a corrupt corporation, bent on world domination, Kazumi learned Kazuya had inherited her devil gene, which could become a demon soon. Heihachi discovers this and kills his wife, which Kazuya challenges Heihachi over. Heihachi then throws Kazuya over a cliff into lava, both as punishment and to test Kazuya's transformation. Just good parenting skills. Kazuya trains for the next 21 years, and then enters the King of Iron Fist tournament his father organizes. He defeats his father and throws him over the same cliff, inheriting Heihachi's corporation. But rather than do things better, Kazuya just makes things worse, further expanding his father's corporation, resulting in conquests, animals experimentations, kidnappings, and murders. While he served as the playable protagonist in the first game, he has since become a major antagonist, even toward his own son, Jin Kazama. Kingdom Hearts, released for the PlayStation 2 in March of 2002, stars a young boy named Sora. He lives on Destiny Islands with his friends Kairi and Riku, who all plan to leave the island and venture to new places. But the night before their maiden voyage, darkness overtook the island and creatures called Heartless attacked. Sora went to find his friends, finding Riku accepting of the darkness. Sora is granted a weapon known as the Keyblade to fight off the Heartless and is subsequently thrown around through the universe. What follows is a massive story following him, partners Donald Duck and Goofy, and many others as they explore many Disney worlds full of their respective characters as well as Final Fantasy characters in order to find Sora's previous friends, rescue the 7 princesses of Destiny, and defeat the darkness spreading through the universe. Sora became a very recognizable and well-beloved character to the point that he was the highest requested character to join the roster of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Well, that's it. That is every playable appearance for every character in Smash Ultimate. Almost. You may have noticed that I didn't talk about some of the characters, and that's because I couldn't find anything else for them. 6 characters ended up having their only playable appearance being the Smash games, those being Dark Samus, Wii Fit Trainer, Duck Hunt, Ridley, Zombie, and Enderman. Dark Samus and Ridley appear only as antagonists for Samus, Wii Fit Trainer is only a visual for exercises, the Duck Hunt duo are targets, and Zombie and Enderman only appear as enemies. You could count Super Mario Maker costumes as a playable occurrence for Wii Fit Trainer and Duck Hunt, and you can make Zombie and Enderman skins in Minecraft, but those will only just be playing as a different character and not as a true representative of those characters as themselves.
Hello everyone, thank you for watching the video, I really appreciate it. A lot of work went into it.
I realize there may have been some editing mistakes in there. This is my first video I've really put together like this, but I hope you enjoyed it all the same. Last couple of years have been pretty difficult, not just for me, but for a lot of other people involved, and I'm working on trying to resolve that. If you could help share this video around, I hope some of the information on the video was interesting enough for you to get out to other places. Those of you coming here from my other channel, the Alex95 channel, I appreciate it. I got a Mario Chaos run, Super Mario 64 randomizer run happening over there right now, and if you could give that a watch as well, I'd appreciate that too. I also have been working on Power Master a lot recently as well. I got some more, a lot more graphics put up, and a lot more stuff put together. It's slow going, but it's getting there. Thank you everyone who has stuck around this long. I really appreciate it. Like, comment, subscribe, all of that. And until next time, I'll see you around.